Hello, listeners. Thanks for tuning in again. I'm excited for this week's guest. Somebody that we run in the same circles and knew of each other pretty much all throughout school. And I'm just stoked to have some eccentric conversations with today's guest, Sarah Gudmundson.
Sorry, do I say hey?
If you want to.
Hi.
I mean, there's nobody here. I know I do it like I'm actually like Mr. Rogers or some shit, but
Like, it is more natural, and everybody on YouTube and podcasts, they do it, and I guess just being in this seat, it feels different, and I'm obviously not used to it first time.
and there's a lot of bright fucking lights and
Well,
Mazel. That's Andy Narwhal. He's the he's a gay half Jewish narwhal.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow.
And actually, that's the whale sitting right next to you.
I noticed that. Now I lost him. I'm very sorry, buddy.
No, he's okay. So we were kind of talking about this before we started recording, but so you have 3 siblings, or there's 3 of you?
4 of us, 3 siblings.
Okay. And then where are you at in that mix?
I'm the second oldest. My brother Steven is only 17 months older than me. Kayla is 1 month shy of 2 years younger than me, and then Erica is 5 years thereabouts younger than me. So
Okay.
yeah, we're pretty closely spaced out, and I don't even know why my mom would have done that. But we are very close as a result.
Are your parents religious, or was your family?
Oh, very much. Yes. Yeah, very conservative Christian upbringing, and I would say it's kind of like the stereotypical conservative Christian upbringing, if that helps paint a picture at all. But yeah, I mean, I think that was a very defining characteristic for all of us as family or as individuals, even for a long time.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I always thought of was like the expectations of you guys, because your mother worked at the high school. And then I feel like there was kind of a stereotype because of your guys' last name. You were all perceived as like good, straight-laced.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of like your presentation of yourself is stressed, not ever verbally or outright, but just in a way that like it just felt like I at some point growing up at a very early point I learned that was the something to always consider, and that it was important. And I definitely think that is not uncommon in our society, even amongst people who aren't conservative or religious, maybe especially so in some of those cases. But I definitely think that that's not uncommon, and it's toxic for sure.
You know what? Like, I wish we would have had that label back then, because it was such a good, it really was such a good descriptor for the way that like a lot of kids were being raised, because there was a wave from, Kevin's youth group. So the religious aspect got pushed. You were either like a fun Christian or a conservative Christian, but everybody was Christian.
Yeah.
So like
that's our town.
Yeah, so it was it could get pretty testy, because it's stressful enough being a kid in a small town because everybody knows everything. And then when you add on top of it like these eternal consequences for how you act. So you're not just going to get detention if you do something outside of school. So like just there's a lot of room for shame and stress.
Not just in like the idea of your soul, but just in people who, well, I guess in my upbringing, I felt shamed a little bit for things that I didn't fully understand and didn't have an open conversation about like clothing choices.
Mm.
And there are a lot of cliches about that. Guys only want one thing or it makes them think.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But I never got it until I was probably older than necessary, like 23, 24. And then I had an ex-boyfriend really kind of break it down and insist on, despite any of my confusion or protest, and I really fully started to get a good picture. And it was
So you're saying like he was like telling you, mansplaining how women dress and what it
no,
describes,
like,
or
well, I think one conversation in particular sticks out to me as kind of like a defining one, and I don't remember a lot of details about it, but just kind of, I remember just kind of dismissing like not everybody, not all men.
oh,
It was me, and he was like, no, but like all women who
oh,
way, and I was like, no, though.
okay,
And he was like, yeah, all of them. That was new for him too. I guess we both kind of came to some realizations together.
yeah,
I think it's actually really common in our society too, and I think especially in our generation even, it's kind of preached that guys and girls are the same with their libido and their mindset and stuff. You see all these like college party videos, and there's that chick who's really cool and open about her sexuality and stuff, and I think there's something a little off about it. I think it's not quite right.
okay. I'm interested in
Okay.
in diving in a little more of that. So you think that there is a difference in like sex drive, you're saying? Or yeah, okay.
Yeah, or motivation.
Yes.
And I didn't used to think that that was true.
I'm going to move your mic just a smidge.
Sure.
I'm going to do a
Sorry, you'll have to bring me back.
no. So motivation for
Yeah. No, I was thinking. I used to. Well, I used to subscribe to that kind of cliche idea that like men only want this and women only want this and we're this way, and like, oh, that's such a girl thing. You know how girls are and you know how guys are, and then I shifted out of that completely, and I was like, those are stereotypes and they're not based on anything really substantial. And I kind of thought everybody was really more or less the same, and I did not factor in some of the evolutionary aspects, the hormones and different things like that. I think somebody said to me one time, or brought up the point that like a male animal is more or less motivated to, well, we're all animals are motivated to reproduce, carry on their genetics.
Yep, their genealogy for sure.
And male animals, sorry. Male animals in general, from a basic standpoint, decide to evolve to sow their seed. And they don't really have much consequence
Yeah.
for doing so.
So because like in our species we call it rape, but in the animal kingdom it's copulating. So because they're genetically predisposed to do this thing, it's completely out of their control. But as a society, like the fact that we have societies, right? We can even say that,
Right.
and we have. So once you have,
Puts us outside it.
yeah.
Well, there's a natural evolution just the same of society, and I feel like we're not even close to our potential yet. But that is part of that process.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about like it's weird because there's what are they called, Mennonists?
Mennonites?
No.
Mennonists, yeah, like
Right.
Mennonists,
Yeah. So that think that like, oh, we don't treat women any differently, so it must not be real that women are treated differently. And
Right. Well, and then they tend to kind of flock to, and even because they're more attracted to and have more in common with women who believe the same kinds of things as them most of the time,
yeah,
uh, that those women reinforce just the same. Like, I had my mom say one time, like, I don't feel discriminated against or demeaned. I'm like,
oh, okay,
like she said, like, I've never felt like men didn't treat me like an equal. And I was
yeah,
like, first of all, I see it every day in your marriage to my father. And I don't, just because you don't feel it, like, it's there. And I don't need to convince her of it. I don't want to convince her that she's less happy than she is. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I've sure tried, but
I always say that it sucks that you like an individual, like when people start to talk that way. Like it sucks that you grew up in an environment where that shit was normalized,
right,
because you shouldn't, like the whole subservient thing, like it shouldn't be a point of pride.
right,
Like that's a submissive thing
absolutely.
where you're basically you're on the verge of putting your candle out.
Right. I don't think there's anything to be proud of in a circumstance where any person has less of a voice than they otherwise might. Even children, I feel strongly about that as well. Like, I think it's important to treat people's feelings like they deserve just as much ground as anybody else's.
For sure. Yeah, and I mean, I was just talking about this with somebody about how when I was in school, like it was viewed the way that I would interact with like authoritative figures. I was like people thought that I was like anti-authority, so
Mm,
that was my whole thing. But the more that I thought about it, like all of the teachers or faculty that I had issues with were ones who spoke down to students,
mm,
and it's like we spend how many hours a day with each other. You know that we have the capacity to have normal conversations with you. Like there's no need to do this, like other than you're trying to stand your ground and make sure that there's this weird, I don't know. So that was something that I always struggled with, was why can't all people be treated like they have the capacity to be on the same level?
well, and
I get
I
that there's
I
like,
agree with you, but I can think to myself already about times that I failed to do so, and times that I regret having not done it just in a civil interaction because I judge people and because they're dumber sometimes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I should
yeah,
slap them, but I do think that some of how we interact with each other affects how they're going to interact back, and yeah, that doesn't surprise. It makes me sad. It sounds so condescending that they thought that about you
but
outright.
I mean, it's weird because I have that whole, I don't, I live in the gray.
Mm,
Like I don't. It's hard for me to make like a hard stance on anything. So I try to look at things from all angles.
yeah.
So I know that beyond my, like the reason, one of the reasons why I thought that way was because of my codependency issues.
Mm,
I'm prone to white knighting and like self-righteous stuff.
okay.
So because I see this, I'm the one. Oh, obviously nobody else is doing anything about it, so I have to be the one.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's not always necessary. So
Sure.
there was definitely situations where it didn't need to be had, or I could have just talked to somebody about it rather than being so confrontational.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that.
But I mean, back to, since we're back on school, like I'm curious, did you feel like you were treated differently by other students because of kind of the, because I feel like Steve, like there was, he really was looked like a straight laced, like
Sure.
does everything
Yeah.
right kind of
And it took a
person.
really long time to break out of certain shells that, like, when
Mm.
external things. And that's probably true of all of us. Speaking for my siblings here, but yeah, more some kind of self-consciousness that played into that. I do think I was aware of other people's perceptions of me, but that was a perception that I was an active participant in,
Ah.
precipitating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was more or less comfortable with that at the time. So, but yeah, I felt like it was purposeful. I think I can't speak for anybody else,
Oh.
but especially for myself, and for my sister, who is the closest in age to me, the third of us. I feel more or less confident that that was true about her as well.
Mm.
Can't speak as much to Stephen and Erica about how much of it was what they were aware of or comfortable with.
So when did you become? I was trying to think of this too, and I hope this doesn't offend you, but I feel like you're like a combination of Jack Sparrow and Mary Tyler Moore.
I mean, it sounds awesome.
In you can look a certain way, but you have this like whimsical and artful way of looking at things
Yeah.
in a way that other people don't.
Yeah,
So
I like to break the concepts more on the inside thing. I mean, like.
but when did that happen? Like, when did the self-discovery stuff happen?
I don't know how far I want to go down the rabbit hole of it. How simple can I make it?
Like, did you go to college?
Kind of. I kind of went to college for a year.
Okay.
And it was less that. I actually ended up going to an inpatient treatment center for an eating disorder at the age of 21. So therapy is the shit, obviously. But it wasn't all of it. I think another.
Okay, wait. Let's backtrack.
Sure.
So you did inpatient, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. So because you've always been fairly thin, but like, what was that? Did it become like an expectation for yourself where because you thought you needed to maintain that's what kind of pushed it overboard, or?
There were a couple factors. I think there's obviously some emotional rooting, processing or being incapable of processing some emotions. That is a factor in there something like when you learn to. This is my own theory, by the way. I don't know how much I've even presented it to many people, but when you are used to kind of shutting down yourself, your own emotions, like, no, I don't need to feel this way. I don't need to think this way, or like you're trying to shut down things like I kind of learned or felt like I was taught that being angry is kind of bad. And expressing a lot of kinds of emotions, if they could be offensive or upsetting for other people, is bad rather than how you're expressing them. That was something I didn't really learn the difference between, or I wasn't really taught. And what I kind of learned was it's the expression of the emotion itself that's the problem. And so shutting that down kind of genuinely, I think it changed some kind of even brain pattern in me, but also in my how I thought to operate. I could shut down, or I didn't know why not to. My normal cues about being a human being, like being hungry. And because I was also motivated by some concept about things like that, I felt that was a pretty easy and acceptable way to do it.
Wow.
And I didn't know why not.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like I get what you're saying. I never thought about it in that way though. Like for people who do like bottle things up, how it fucks with your mechanism of what is healthy to kind of keep to yourself, and then wow.
Well, and you know what's interesting? To take that a step further, so there were different stages or different points that it would be more the not eating at all, or there were times that it was more of a bulimia, like a purging situation for me, and same kind of concept, but also a different scenario. You are suppressing and suppressing until you can't, and that was probably what made me think of this theory that I had. Is I just noticed that when I was trying to not purge anymore on my own before outside of therapy and things like that, I also know, well, even when I did, even when that was my normal eating kind of pattern, my whole life kind of operated that way. Like I would have have binges and purges of shopping and then alcohol. And not purges, I guess, but like kind of restriction.
Okay.
Than binging. Of anything that would kind of fire up my dopamine.
Yeah.
Serotonin.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever it is that kind of excites my brain. And my brain got used to that pattern. And it's still probably a little bit. I think a lot of that is an ADD thing.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And in fact, what I just recently learned in the last couple of years is that it is more statistically common for undiagnosed females to develop an eating disorder, undiagnosed with ADD.
Yeah.
Exactly because of that, because there's a kind of deficit in the frontal lobe.
Oh.
Of the excitement.
Okay.
And that's why ADD. I just listened to this and I was thinking about it in one of your podcasts. It's people with ADD have a higher propensity as well to be addicts.
For sure.
And that is part of that.
Well, yeah, I just learned like a week ago that we're more prone to like if you're with a group of friends and somebody's like, we should go to Duluth right now, the person with ADD or ADHD is going to be like, yeah, let's do it. Like if somebody presents an idea that seems cool or is just like, yeah, why not? Like we're very susceptible to that.
Stop. Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Why not? Am I missing something? You're
just
like, yeah, if you can't think of why not already, yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely accurate.
Yeah. So like the compulsion, like we're super prone to that, which absolutely feeds into addiction because you're just as easily talked into like, let's go day drinking and eat tacos, or let's.
It's harder to make yourself not do things that seem fun, and it's so goddamn hard to make yourself do something you're just disinterested in.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And that when I found that out, that's just the key way to explain it. I think to some people, I was just like, that just explains so much. And it is. Our society is not ready. It's not set up for that yet.
Yeah.
And there's too many of us.
Yeah. Well,
for that to not be in it.
I also didn't know that there was like a spectrum for ADD and ADHD.
I mean, it makes sense, yeah.
But like there's like a variety. I feel like it's, if you have ADD or ADHD, you probably have what do they call it? Dual diagnosis. So there's probably another thing that marries with that that kind of puts you in a different area than somebody else. So like my friend who has ADHD that we just had on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's supposed to be called ADHD.
Well, no. I think because it's adult, I don't know.
Yeah.
But so his thing is like he'll get extremely emotional in confrontational moments, and it's something that he says he can't help. Like tears will just start coming out, and he just has no control over it. And so his version of what like ADD does to him is completely different from like what it does to myself. I feel like we all though have
effects of it.
like the whole reading a book, how you can just blow past a page and have no idea what you read, and so you have to go back. Like I feel like a lot of us have that in common.
Although I don't know if that, I guess I didn't know that was an ADD thing. Maybe it happens to us more frequently. But I guess I thought that was like everybody. But I am probably around more people with ADD. They say that's true of people who have it. You connect better and on a deeper level. Makes sense. I mean, because there is a subtly different language. I don't know what it is. I don't know anything else about that. But that's
Yeah.
what I've heard to be true, and that's what I've found to be true. I definitely have liked and connected with better anybody who has some aspect.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we, or at least for myself. So like, I haven't asked this enough, but we recognize really quickly at the beginning of a conversation with somebody new whether they're reserved or not. And so we kind of adapt into like some people consider it being polite, but like being interested in whatever it is they're talking about. That like, oh wow, I didn't know that about mini golf. Like that's so fascinating. Like and like I said, I don't know if that's an everybody thing, but I've found that like when you notice that somebody's like at work yesterday, somebody came in and they were kind of limping a little bit to get a piercing changed out. And I was like, hey, how's it going? And they were like, I just had asshole surgery. I got my tubes tied. And then I had rhinolabia labiaplasty. I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
So like you can tell right out of the gate, like, oh yeah, we're just going to talk about everything.
Wow, you're fun. And then I think that's a good way to say it. Like, and then people who just like, can you just like chill out a little bit or something? Like, you're not fun. You know? That's true, yeah.
Or like trying to find ways to get people to open up because that reservation makes us feel uncomfortable. Because it's like, why don't put your wall down, man? This is I'm a safe person. Yes, yeah, exactly.
Would rather you be a little weird and we don't like people are not perfect and yeah, it makes you feel like you're not gonna be allowed to be the way you are.
Yeah.
Because
you want to push this a little.
That doesn't allow them to do it.
Yes, you want to push this just a little bit closer to you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Womp. There you go.
Yeah.
That's better.
Just getting excited and
well, these chairs rock and it moves the arm, so it just happens.
Yeah.
Because when Kim is on, she's constantly doing this. So I'm like, baby, grab the mic, pull it closer to you. But I mean, I'm fascinated because like we all kind of saw each other from time to time after high school, and there would be like, oh, what are you up to? Yada, yada, bullshit. But you kind of like disappeared, at least off of my radar. And then when I saw you again, you were like a completely different person. So that's what I'm fascinated to see is to like, you are like very artsy and love interpreting things. And I just think that's so rad. And
it feels that way. I'm really enthusiastic about all of this stuff. So yeah.
So like when it comes to like art and the kind of lesser known things about life, or things that like people weren't diving into, like fine art, photography, and different types of music and things. Like, when did you start to go down that rabbit hole of like going from this conservative kind of upbringing to basically like Coachella?
I think it dials. Thank you. I think it dials back to the same thing, going to therapy and kind of learning some stuff about like what is normal and not, and things like that. And there there was there's a lot of self-awareness that kind of came from it, to where I started to notice what was authentic and what wasn't about
Ah,
myself, about how I was interacting with things, and feeling freer to, starting with expressing your emotions, and that there are no emotions that are bad or wrong. It's okay to have them. How you express them, what you choose to do as a result of them, that may be something to consider. But feeling how you feel and letting yourself, being aware of it, that all comes with what you like and what you want to do. And people don't have enough of that. And it's almost addicting once you start to realize how much happier you can be, just noticing, why do I feel this way? Where is this coming from? And then unraveling it, because we're complicated, but we're also kind of not given all the tools to figure it out most of the time.
yeah.
So it takes a little bit longer, probably.
When I like realized that, so I didn't know this, but so when I was put on hold so I was the adult mental health unit in St. Cloud Hospital for 8 days, and I didn't know that. So they had like diagnosed me with major depression, anxiety, and things like that. But they had also written down a note that said potentially hypomania, which is like just a step below being bipolar. But a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Very, very similar. And so without knowing that, I was listening to this podcast and they had a clairvoyant on. And the guy said, I'm bipolar, and people who are bipolar are more prone to being clairvoyant. And I went, fuck.
Oh.
We're not actually clairvoyant. We're not connected to, God damn it. I was like, it was ironic that he said this thing, and it was like, oh, you actually just described why we think we are. And I started like subtly asking my friends who were out about being bipolar if they had noticed this kind of feeling, and all of them were like, yeah, for sure. And I was like, fuck. So
I've never heard that part. I mean, I've heard things. I have a theory that people who think, and I kind of believe this about myself anyway, I oscillate on my opinion. I don't know stuff. But when you are really perceptive of people's energy, it's a little bit of a defense mechanism.
wow.
Because you had to be at some point, for somebody who would flip out if you were not behaving the way you were supposed to be or something. You had to be really.
Wow. Yeah, that's an excellent point.
I've noticed that about people. I've noticed that. I know that about myself. I know that about other people. Like when I get to know them, when they're really good at that. So.
That's a good piece to a puzzle that I've been trying to solve, because I've described it like on the verge of what you just said, which was fascinating. But I've said when I found that out, right, that this guy was like, the whole clairvoyant thing was like shit, and the whole being perceptive of people's energy and like that whole thing, I was like, really what was happening was I was like forcing or like projecting my openness and like word vomiting like personal shit and getting people to open up, and I did it so much that if you do that often enough, you're gonna kind of be able to guess where people are going to go with whatever it is that you're bringing up.
Totally.
So
Your brain is so much better at recognizing patterns than you are aware of it.
for sure.
So you can call it a lot of things, but we're not good at figuring out what you're doing in that way. We explain it however we want to.
Yeah, I always say that your brain doesn't really give a fuck about your feelings.
Yeah.
It just wants to survive. So, like, because we're such an advanced species, like comparatively to a lot of other creatures, your brain just adapts to whatever. There's still a base level. There's still that 3-step program of we need water. Tell the brain that we need to think about how to get water. Yeah. So like it just adapted along with us and is like, so like when it came to addiction, there was like the midbrain trying to figure out how to get dopamine, get that major rush of dopamine. Midbrain is like, do whatever lingo you need to make it so that we think that we have to go get it right now. So like there's this subconscious thing that doesn't fucking care. It's just like, we know that the dopamine juice means we're surviving. So say that we had a really, we were super bummed out that Panic at the Disco canceled their show. So now we have to go drink. But I mean, people don't realize, like, with eating disorder stuff like that, that falls under the addiction umbrella. And like,
yes, it does. Yes, it fucking does. Absolutely.
And I wish that more people would talk about it that way, because we're becoming so open about addiction, but there's still like this weird standoffishness towards eating disorder stuff.
Well, you know what I think it is, though? Maybe I'm wrong.
Been right so far, so.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the body image thing, and especially around females right now. And it is, speaking about the societal evolution, whenever there is something that's a little bit oppressed, a little bit toxic, there is a pendulum swing. They snap back hard, too hard, and then we eventually kind of come back to the middle, something that's like not as feminism. Like,
yeah,
as a feminist, like, there is a lot out there that is not rational about it. It's emotional.
Yeah.
But that's part of how we do it. That's part of how you gotta get the voice out. You gotta get the attention. It's how it has worked for whatever reason. And I think as we progress further and further, there is probably going to be a less intense some of those things, because we'll understand how to communicate and value each other's voices a little bit better.
Yeah. That's it's so funny. Like, we have such a similar brain pattern, like in the way that we describe things, because when I talk to people who are like, yeah, I'm for women's rights, or I'm for gay rights, but do they have to be so loud about it? And I always say, like, there has to be some loud person. And people, when they bring up Martin Luther King, it's like, he was considered too fucking loud. Like, back in the day, that's why he was fucking assassinated. Well, they've
even said this about Jesus, and I guess I don't really run into that very much, but he was loud about some stuff that bothered it disrupted the society, as it were, at the time.
But
and it's necessary.
Yes, 100%. So over time, people look at it as like a necessary thing that needed to happen. But why exactly?
And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm right there with do you need to be that way? It's a little obnoxious sometimes, and it's also because I've been there too, and I'm sure on social media you've witnessed me that way, and really dialing it back a little bit. I had my own pendulums swinging about my voice and my opinions, and we all get there, hopefully. But as a group, for sure.
There's certain things that stick out in my mind, like when it comes to what is like how history is going to look back on a thing, and there's I always do now I do this test of to figure out whether I'm wrong about a feeling that I have. This was probably like 10 years ago. It was Mother's Day, and I was like, if you are saying Happy Mother's Day to me because you own a cat, it's not the same fucking thing.
Oh, thank you. Wow, I'm very solid on that one.
So I do feel that way, but I had a lot of people get really upset because they were like, "What? There's, a large number of women. Well, people who can't have kids, people who so the attachment that they feel, there's like trauma associated with it. Yeah. So I started to realize like it's fine to have whatever like thought. It's like when people complain about how there's plus size models, right? They're like, oh, why does that have to be out there? And it's like, nobody's saying you have to like it.
Right.
Just shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah,
Like,
like
I hate country music, but I'm not going to go protest a Garth Brooks concert. Like, I don't.
Right. Yeah. Actually, the way that you said that, it kind of like what you said about something earlier. It verbalizes and pieces together perfectly a concept that was floating around for me. It was like, yeah, I mean, if their quality of life is fine, or if it makes them happy, why not? If it's not hurting anybody, if it's not hurting anything, if it's not bothering the rest of us in our actual day-to-day lives, why are you fucking worried about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure true.
It's
still hard because like some people are so annoying about so many things
yeah.
that they like, and they're like, oh, okay, but but why not?
Yeah. And I mean, it's okay to be wrong. Like, I'm fine with like understanding that I get upset about irrational things, and I just accept those things about myself and say I can't help it. Doesn't mean I'm gonna like do like a hard stance and die on this hill of like people who chew with their mouth open need to be pushed off a ledge.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
I'm.
People. There's a different type of thing that people should learn, but not everybody does. That is very black and white about like, no, it's wrong or it's right.
Mm.
Okay or it's not okay. And until they come to terms with some of the things that's rooted in,
Yeah.
they're not going to see it.
Well, I think there's a lot of like self-reflective. I don't know if it's projecting, but like I feel like I've started to notice that people do this whole like when they do say that they have an issue with XYZ, I feel like they are internally going, well, I could never do this thing. I could never be with a same-sex person. And so because of that uncomfortability, it comes out as I'm not so sure that it's an okay thing.
There are theories that I read that I never really understood all the way until more recently in my life. When I started, maybe I read about it different, or I just thought about things different. But where people who feel like it's not okay and take a harder stance, that discomfort is rooted in some part of them that wants to. And what bothers them is that it's not, they determined that it's not acceptable. And other people need to too. And the more emotion behind that is, the more emotion behind that is.
You know what? I'm kind.
What is it like? Homophobes are really gay. Like that's why. That's why I think so. But like,
Well, now that I think about it, like
that's true of me.
You're gay?
No,
Everybody's a little gay.
Yeah. Honey boo boo, right?
But it's making me realize that like what the reason why they're vocal is they're looking for somebody to go, right, guys, because then they can go, whew, I'm not the only one, and therefore I'm a little right at least. There's
But like, I think that's what made me.
Sorry, that swung a little bit again. Bring her just a smidge.
I'm also very. I make movements with my hands.
Like I said, these are rocking chairs, so they're gonna bounce and.
Well, I'm also not like grounded on the floor. I don't know.
I love when people do get cross-legged on these chairs because I want people to feel like we're just talking.
Yeah.
I don't want it to seem like I'm grilling somebody or that like I'm putting you on some type of stand. Like I love when people get comfy wumpy.
That's the type of chair that you chose. That's probably a good one for that because there are ones that are like just more formal seeming, and you don't know how to. Do you know what I mean? Like the more like geometrical ones.
Yeah.
Square chairs and stuff. They just can't sink in or move with one. Anyway, to dial it back. I think I noticed certain things about myself that like what irritates me the most about even just somebody who seems dumb or immature. I realized reminded me of a younger me. As much, and it took a long time to admit that because I didn't want to look at that.
Yeah.
But when I started looking for it, then I definitely always saw it. People who bothered me the most in those ways were like like a younger me that I had learned not to look at. And that just reinforced the concept about anything else that you think is wrong about other people a little bit.
Yeah.
Like whatever I feel stronger about is something that I'm just like, how did you not know about that? Why didn't you learn this?
Yeah.
What I know now.
Dude, when I like realized that I was an atheist, it's so funny. Like people like assume that it was like I was like in church or like had some religious thing.
That's my least. Oh my.
Like it actually happened when I was holding Layla, editing some photos and listening to some audio stuff, and I just looked down and I was like, "Oh, this is what's important." Like a world where I can trust other human beings to have her best interest at heart. Like the hereafter shit, I don't care about.
There is two things that are really, really huge for me on what you just said. First one is that religious. My main qualm with religion is that it takes out a kind of personal responsibility to be a better person because it tells you you're not gonna be. And I think that's shifting a little bit.
Yeah.
In some of the things that I've seen, like with our generation as well. 2 out of the 3 of my siblings remain religious, and they really grasp.
Pretty steadfast.
Yeah, they grasp the introspection and the self-improvement. And Stephen actually just said a couple months ago, he said he really believes that we do have a personal responsibility to reflect and be a better person. And reflect on your mistakes and think about yourself.
Yeah.
In order to be better, and that is necessary. And I agree with that. But there is a part of like just necessarily in the message of Christianity that you will not be. You can only be as good as you can be, and you can't be perfectly moral or or perfectly good and not fuck up.
Yeah.
So they don't. I think it's kind of deeply ingrained in our society in some ways. Like we don't even think we should try and attain something like that.
Yeah.
And we don't expect it of each other.
Yeah. I mean, the concept of absolute morality is such a fucking oxymoron because the second that you become aware of an immoral thing, if you don't change, then it's already been diminished and you don't have. So there's like Christian apologists like to push like this concept that God is an absolute, has absolute morality. He's the like one decider of what's good and evil.
Right.
But throughout history, there's a lot of things that he was given the thumbs up on that society was like, maybe not.
Yeah.
So like with religion, it has never been the church that has made progress. It's always society that says, hey, we should probably change this.
Well, and what that is, more than religion, although it usually comes from religion because it breeds the whole, nope, this is right and this is wrong. It breeds the black and white thinking. And what happens is, even today, even people who aren't religious, when we age as humans, we have less energy to explore
Mm.
and to be open. And some of that is wisdom, but it feels like wisdom when we just decide, nah, it's better this way.
Yeah.
It's better the way it was.
Yeah.
Kids these days.
Ah, God.
And that is something that, I forget if it was Aristotle or Plato, but one of them said, these older guys had been saying that about the younger kids for as long as we've been around. Many of them.
I'm glad that I haven't hit that stage yet. Like I'm so stoked to see like Landon has a transgender friend, a pansexual friend,
Wow, really?
and like it's nothing. It doesn't matter to them at all. Like when I bring it up, I'm like, oh, really? Well, that's fascinating. And they're just like,
Right.
yeah, it's just so and so. Like,
Yeah. Right. No, yeah, and they can actually understand different aspects of it because their mind is freer to do so.
yeah,
Yeah, they don't have any like formulated thought even about what is different or unique about it. And as much as we try to think like that, we'll never be able to like empty our concepts of just what being a human is and just what society has told us about life and ourselves and all of that. And the best we can do is kind of question all of it. But we are, no matter what, going to be the result of all of those things anyway.
yeah. I mean,
And you can only move so far outside that thought.
yeah. Well, I mean, Hitchens used to say this, which was, people who are part of a church. So, like the LDS Church, for example, they believe that Latter-day Saints, aka Mormonism, is the one true religion, and they know it deep within them. They have a testimony that they bear about it, yada yada. But if you were born in Pakistan or a Muslim, highly Muslim populated area, you would have been a devout Muslim and you would be saying the exact same thing about Islam. So like it's this weird thing of you don't like it's tough for people to grasp that it is a regional thing. Like you really are
It's a time frame thing. It's culture. It's the age you were born into, the society, the family. It comes down to the experiences that you've experienced, which I genuinely believe if you were born into somebody else's life
mm-hmm.
and experienced all the same things as them, you would be just like them. There's nothing intrinsically about you that would be better or different. And so, like, you kind of have to take that into perspective they should know better, but it's still one of those things. It's like we feel like we learned better about something.
Yeah. Well, it's
and
the.
it's annoying that they don't. And that's all it's our narcissism.
Yeah. Well, it's the I don't think people realize like how much the Dunning-Kruger effect applies to like everybody's life. Like what you were just saying was basically describing the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is if you like that Mormon Islam example, right? You wouldn't know. You would have no idea that you could even compare a different life to what you're living right now. So it's almost impossible unless an outside source makes you aware of that thing to think that you could even be wrong. So it's not that everybody's ignorant.
Maybe that's why everybody wants to be so
Yeah. They just lack that concept of like, so the most famous quote of the Dunning-Kruger effect or example is stupid people lack the capacity to recognize that they're stupid. So like, people from the South do whistle and stuff. Oh, I just, I live in the mountains and skin beavers and, you know what I mean? Like, that guy would have, exactly, like, but he would have no idea if he's growing up around other mountain folk that there's even a difference. Once you start to introduce other things, then they're like, oh, that seems weird and dumb, and that makes me uncomfortable, so.
Maybe it may be that none of us is more or less intelligent than another. It's just we're more aware of something.
Yes.
Whatever that may be. The more time I devote into practicing any given thing, I'm going to be better at it.
Yeah.
Am I smarter for that?
Are you Taylor Swift?
Wait, I don't get that reference.
No, I just like to throw that out. Like, it's just me being a facetious.
I'm sorry. I thought it was me saying something really interesting. And then I thought I was going to like her a little bit extra. But...
No, I just mean like they're like how, so people don't know, but like when you were talking to Kim earlier and like how you see somebody's social media life and you feel like you know them, and that whole Hillary Duff thing, like there's an aspect of like the way that if the way that they are on social media is how they are, then I know for sure that I could get along with them.
Right.
When in reality, who fucking knows?
Yeah. I mean, it probably just boils down to how they present themselves with humans, and then it'll be the same for you anyway. But that's just too philosophical.
But anyways, so you had touched on that conversation with that boyfriend who was kind of saying that what his that actually leads to that Dunning-Kruger thing. Like all of his examples of how women are were told to him and explained to him that if you see a woman that looks like this,
and then he interprets it. That's what drove me so crazy. He interprets it through that lens, and that's what I've seen guys do a lot. And I'm just like, why do you think that when she does that, that's what she's trying to indicate to you? That's just idiotic to me.
yeah.
It's very offensive that I learned a lot of me being myself was taken as very overt sexual advances that I was completely I was very offended and horrified. So.
Your relationships outside of high school, like I'm curious as to like what your perception of like, did you think that you were going to find a good Christian man and then you guys were going to live like a similar life to how you grew up?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know why not. I thought that's what I wanted. But I didn't know anything about what I would want in a partner or even what that meant to know anything outside of that. And that was unfortunate and led to a lot of weird decision-making choices on my part. I really heavily subscribe to that whole friend zone thing where guys would say like, you're superficial cunt
Mm.
for liking me but not wanting to date me. Like, what? Why are you that superficial? Why are you drawn to bad guys who like hurt you? And like, there's something wrong with that girl. She's dumb or blind or something. And I didn't want to be that. And I didn't want to be superficial. So I didn't want it to be all about looks. But the thing that I realized it shifted my perspective all the way is if you like someone but you're not attracted to them, you can call it, superficial, but isn't that friendship?
Yeah.
Isn't that what being friends is?
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to be attracted. You're supposed to have a chemistry. Otherwise, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And it was such a waste of their time that I gave them a chance. Because I couldn't get there. I couldn't. If I wasn't that attracted to them, I was always explaining to myself why I should be in that relationship anyway. Like, I really wanted it in the same way as a relationship that I was genuinely attracted to the person that I was with.
Yeah.
Completely different. Mind blowing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to say like that we recognize how biology works and how the chemicals in your brain work, but then in the same world that you're supposed to go against how you genuinely feel like when it comes to attraction.
Yeah. And all it is those people complaining or touting this kind of message that I didn't know why not to listen to are attracted to that woman, and they don't feel bad about it or and why aren't they going after girls who are awesome that they think are ugly?
Yeah, I know it's a massive double standard. Really, so that's and in comes simps and incels. Like, really, these were bitter individuals, and I get to an extent like being so downtrodden about your physical appearance that you're incapable of like being able to love yourself, and therefore you're reaching for, when you see somebody that's attractive, you go, God damn it, why can't I, instead of just being like, wow, that person's attractive, you for some reason internalize this like, why does a bitch like that not give a guy like me a chance?
Yeah. But there's something so bizarrely like entitled about that. That I'm just not that way. So, and I know a lot of people are, men and women, about different things, different aspects of life or whatever, but like I can't comprehend why that wouldn't be room for introspection or improvement in some way more than pointing fingers and blaming. And that's another theory that I have is when people stop introspecting, it's the result of some kind of trauma. Usually, narcissists in general have some kind of trauma that they're unable to really move past or recover from, and they were legitimately wronged in some way. That like they're just like, no, you are not gonna talk to me like this, treat me like this, and they kind of warp a lot of what other people do into that kind of feeling and project it, and then they never think it's anything except for more of that one trauma.
Yeah. Oh, they all the people like that hijack the word deserve. Like, when I hear somebody overuse the word deserved, and it like I deserve, it's like,
I don't even really. Yeah.
like I feel like now the only time when it's acceptable to use that word is when you're trying to help somebody, and you're saying you deserve to be happy, you deserve to be safe, and like shit like that. Otherwise, yeah, people who are shitty or were shitty like took that word and made it this ugly thing.
I gotta be honest with you. It makes me even a little bit uncomfortable the way you said. Like, I would almost gravitate towards saying you have the right to be.
More
Yeah. Than deserve.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's a little icky.
Yeah, it's because you're right. It's
Deserve or don't.
for sure.
Maybe you don't deserve to be treated that way.
Ah,
But maybe it should be you don't have the right to be treated that way. Maybe that's better
yeah.
too.
Or
You know?
you should have the opportunity to. Yeah, there's all kinds of different ways that you can say it, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Like deserve does have like this because it's a
Entitled
yeah,
still.
it is. It's tied to entitlement for sure. So, were you in relationships where men felt entitled to some aspect of you?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, that was part of the experience of giving relationships a chance to.
You want to pull it up again? Sorry.
Yep. Giving relationships a chance, spending more time in any kind of dating situation or relationship that I otherwise would have not been interested in. Um, so there were subtleties of all of that, but it was still a little bit about who those people were.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I feel like I've just had enough personal experience with people who kind of had that. I don't know if it's a guy thing or it's just I got unlucky. I have theories about all sorts of stuff like that, but it is a pattern
Yeah.
that I've had experiences with. So
I was like I realize now why I had a lot of bad relationships growing up is because I was like before I knew what trauma bonding was, that became part of like the the glue that made me like want to stick to this person was first attractive. Let's have a conversation. And then because of ADD and codependency shit, oversharing and then finding out, "Oh wow, you're fucked up too. We should have a we should have a we should have a fucked up relationship together." Is what ended up happening.
no, well, there's something about attachment styles that naturally bond in that way, and we so easily, without that knowledge, attribute it to other things,
Mm.
other more romantic or spiritual things, even. I have a friend who, like, doesn't really grasp some of those things.
Is it because they don't have thumbs?
I can't even come up with something good enough back. That really took me out of. I'm sorry, I'm in a state of mind. I can't even laugh as much as I want to about how funny that was. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think you're giving it a little more credit.
No, it was funny for me, but like, if I wasn't deep in thought when you threw that out, I would have laughed properly.
I'm prone to doing that. I'm prone to doing that to people.
So I need to give it properly. But
Sorry, so you have a friend.
Probably most people who watch this will laugh properly. Anyway, yeah, my friend just doesn't know a lot about that. Isn't at the same stage or level of awareness in some of the trauma and psychology kind of therapy
Mm.
things, and I don't want to throw it in anyone's face more than it would be appreciated. So it's just something that I gotta sit with and be annoyed a little bit by. But it's just because it pains me a little bit because he'll he'll say every time that he dates somebody new, and it doesn't last all that long, but he'll say like, this guy, he just checks all the boxes. And I'm like, but you said that about a couple months. Like, remember that. Like, don't you feel embarrassed to say that about 2 people in a row? Or 7? I mean, but he's really ascribing so much about, like, no, I just feel it.
Mm.
And, like, there are a lot of reasons why you're feeling something.
Are they bipolar? Because We bipolars say that a lot.
I don't
I just have.
know enough about it.
It's if like I get what you're saying. Like, so do they also say they now are doing this? They're not the person I thought they were, and like it devolves into, oh my god, what did I get myself into? Like,
And then I'm never gonna do that again.
yeah,
And then a couple like shallower kind of like, well, I'm not gonna be this way. I'm not gonna think these things. But then everything else is okay. You know, like, but I'm not gonna say it in the same way either. And then, sometimes still doing that too. You know, or like trying to like reserve some of those kind of fantastical attributes,
mm-hmm.
or like even like hopes or the visions of what this is, maybe like a little bit longer
Mm-hmm.
before then just fully like absorbing all of it all over again. But I think some of that comes with experience. When you don't have a lot of dating experience, it's really easy to go into your first one or two relationships. You're like, here it is, this is it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe that's not true for everybody, but I feel like it's really common to not know what to reserve some judgment for about what
Ah,
that humanness is. Or even recognizing some of the things that, like, you don't need to wait to find out if you guys will still connect about some other stuff when you see some of these things.
yeah.
I don't know. You don't have to give people more chances.
I think people like, rather than, there's a lot of, when they hear something that contradicts with how they feel, they they keep it to themselves for some reason, rather than saying, what do you mean by that? Or why do you think you feel that way?
I never do that. But I didn't used to do that. But I agree with you, and it's such a damn shame.
Yeah.
Because, like, with my boyfriend, I get so mad when I find out he didn't fully get it and he didn't even say anything. Like, I was right there. Like, why can't you, like, we misunderstood each other because you didn't just fucking say it. I'm a huge proponent of, like, just don't be passive aggressive. Don't hold things in. And I'm not saying he's definitely getting better though, because I hated him hard. Like, I'm very upset about that. And it's only because it is such a waste of time
Yeah.
to not say some of those things. Or to express your feelings, like if something made you real sad or like whatever it is. Because I will fully address and talk through whatever it is. And how much better is it to not have to sit with it? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I just don't have patience to sit with things that I could just say to somebody and give them the respect of the opportunity to address it.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that even though I have learned and do advocate for speaking up about some of those things, the times that I still don't are because I'm attributing something about them or how they're going to be to me in a way that I'm not going to get a favorable result. That is not going to be easy. They're
Right.
going to be offended. And that's not fair sometimes. Sometimes they don't deserve me being afraid of them being that way.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. Yeah, I think that comes with like the way, I mean, for me personally, like the way that I interacted with people, the whole combativeness. Yeah, there's definitely instances where they could have had a normal day had I not, gone like decided to question everything.
Well, and it brings us back to what you were saying way earlier about like being weird and talking about weird stuff, and then you're free to like just express yourself. There's something about that in there too, you know? And if you just don't know, if you don't feel as free for them or the circumstance, you know, if it's your boss or whatever,
Mm.
um, say certain things as you otherwise would want to be, it can get muddled in that too.
Yeah.
But I do think usually works a little bit better. It usually works out more than we think it will.
Yeah.
To be honest, people appreciate honesty a lot more. Like when you say some shitty stuff and you're just openly admitting this is true. Like I'm not disguising anything. I read this and I heard this. Sam Harris. I don't know if you know much about him, but
I do.
he's the greatest, and he has a book called Lying, I think.
That sounds right.
And it's not very long, and it was only an audiobook that I listened to. It really wasn't long, and it was monumental for me. Like he was talking about coming from going through, is it the TSA at the airport?
Mm.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
It sounded right. I just couldn't remember. And he was coming from some other country back into the United States in college. And it was some time after he learned about this concept of like, maybe it's always immoral or worse to not, to lie, that it might be.
Oh.
And so he was kind of subscribing to this at the time, and then ever since, of course. But he was talking about how he came from this other country going through TSA, and they were like, "Do you have drugs? Or did you do drugs while you were over there?" And he was like, "Yeah, did. What did you do?" I did, whatever it was, like marijuana, whatever. And they're like, "Do you have any in your backpack?" No. Okay. Because he was willing to disclose things that people otherwise would be uncomfortable to do. And it's not that he was maybe totally comfortable, but he was honest enough that they just trusted the rest of what he was saying too. And they had every reason to, because I don't know.
I get what you're saying. Like his journey to discovering what morality really is, he was willing to put himself out there to figure out, is this something worth it, or is lying a true indicator of being a moral person, or vice versa.
Yeah, what is politeness except for passive aggressive toxicity? Honestly, and I have really come to believe in this too. Like, I would all day, every day, rather you think I'm a little bit impolite and brash, but honest, because you will trust me. You will trust what I say. And your trust is worth more to me than your feelings of about my choice not to be polite instead of being honest.
Yeah, well, like your expectations of how a social interaction is going to go doesn't mean that I have to adhere to whatever that is.
Right. Well, and it's like sad for me. Like, it reminds me, my boyfriend sent some video of like, here's what not to ever say to your wife when she asks, like, does this dress make me look fat or something like that? And I forget what it was, but it just made me so mad because some of the suggestion there was like something that was like overtly offensive and unnecessary, versus what you should do, which was lie and be polite. And go, honey, you look great. And like they were showing for the sake of, I don't know, humor in the video, like something that really made this woman look very unattractive. And I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't think that it's cool to tell somebody that they look good if you don't think they do. Like, if I see a picture of my sister, or I take whatever, if I see a picture of my sister that is not her best photo, I'm gonna say, that's not your best one, rather than saying, no, don't worry, you look good, you look amazing, because every time I tell her she looks amazing, she's gonna go, but wait, is this what I look like all the time? That bad? Is that bad photo? You said that's good, and you say other things are good. Do I look worse than I realize?
I see what you're saying.
I've experienced this. Somebody did that to me, and
That's an interesting way to look at it, because my perception of that analogy, right, or that example that people give fairly often, when I hear that, what I'm hearing is like, I am feeling extremely fragile and self-conscious right now. So rather than saying like, maybe we don't wear that one today, right now.
yeah.
My brain goes to, don't even worry about it.
Sure.
Don't, like, who fucking cares? Like, to me,
I would much rather all day, because that's the only reason I'm asking. See, and that's probably what you're describing as well, is like,
you know what?
You can kind of perceive what that person's question is motivated by.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm just like, I don't know if I like this, and I really want somebody to be like, I don't love it.
Now, if it's the material, like if it's a fashion question, I don't give a fuck. I'll be like, that looks dumb as shit.
Yeah,
but
sure.
if the question is yes, if it
this look good on me, like if you're just like, I don't know, I'm not a fan of something that I'm seeing, like, but that one is better.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
I see what you're saying. But yeah, again, like, I think it's situational in the fact that, like, if it's a friend of yours,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna be like, yes, it makes you right now.
The fuck did you eat last night? Jesus.
I mean, and honestly, I think that might be appreciated. But I don't think it means be unnecessarily frank. Like the movie Liar Liar. I was watching recently. Like, the only thing that bothers me about that is like, not being able to lie doesn't mean you have to say whatever's on your mind.
Right.
And people mix that up. Not just in the movie for the sake of the plot. In real life, people don't give that proper consideration. You don't have to say things that are unnecessary, but don't lie.
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer something dishonestly or try and avoid. My dad always used to say, a half-truth is a whole lie. Like, lying by omission is a thing. So, to me, if in my attempts to be an honest person, I factor that in all the way. If I'm trying to exclude or disguise something, I'm lying, because that's my intent. Even if I'm not technically doing it with my words.
I was gonna say that's interesting, because lying in and of itself does that. I mean, back to you're saying with Sam Harris questioning that stuff, is like, I think really what we're talking about whether it's a bad thing or not is what is our intention and what is the outcome we're looking for.
Yeah.
And if the outcome we're looking for is, I'm going to get away with something,
Right.
it's probably a bad thing.
Or even just disguising your honest thoughts and feelings.
I'm curious as to, like, I feel like that goes back to kind of what was ingrained in you with going through the shit that you went through, is like, I need to know how I truly look. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to, like.
That was part of it.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, because I was in the trenches of my eating disorder at the moment. Not that I think that had much to do with it, because it wasn't a weight thing. It was just like I didn't like how my face looked.
Yeah.
The lighting was shit in a video, and I was like, wow, that's embarrassing. And I had somebody like insist that I looked amazing. And it really made me be like, do you really think that? do you think that is me looking amazing? And like, do I look in the mirror, and because of the way I'm presenting myself only when I'm in the mirror to myself, which is a little bit different, honestly, is that a total facade? And the rest of me is like that video? That fucked me up for a little while.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Until, well,
Well, the shitty thing is when you're at the like lowest points of your disorder, I'm sure you still had people saying you look amazing, and like looking back on it, being like, I was like about to pass out, and you're telling me that I looked great. Like,
yeah, like you're feeding into that is not necessary. Like it would have been more helpful for you to not just try and make me feel good
yeah,
because you don't know why I look bad, but I might. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah, and that's for sure. Part of it's kind of like what Sam was talking about his philosophy professor, and then him too as a philosopher. Like you don't know, you don't know.
Now I'm interested now. Like, so when you give an honest thought or opinion, and somebody becomes combative with you, like how often when you say these things are people like, what the fuck, man? Just say I look like Shaquille O'Neal right now. Just give me, I want to wear these size 17 shoes.
Well, then I don't mind because I'm just like, okay, fine, look stupid, go ahead, but okay, I got you, man. Like it's fine. You're gonna look stupid. Go ahead. The people who have the most problem with it are the people who don't say anything about that. You feel it or you hear it later.
Ah.
Because they're the people who don't do that. So it's offensive to them because we're not being polite to each other now.
Yeah. Yes.
So the people who are like, what the fuck, man? Those people are no problem. Like, they're not as bothered. It's not as personal to them. And they can brush it off. Because sometimes I will say, like, I think you look fucking stupid if you're really saying that. Go ahead. And it doesn't... We can talk to each other like that, and I appreciate that. And I will say, attempting this has taught me a lot about myself because it makes me really deeply reflect on, like, why was my default to not be honest and feel, because I feel guilty, and then I start thinking, like, okay, what about me made me feel uncomfortable with this? What can I do or be differently? Or what about them made me feel how I feel? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you really start to...
Man, you know what I just realized was that, like, that person still gives their opinion. They just give it to somebody else, which is worse. Like, because they'll go, oh, dude, I feel terrible. I told Jessica that she looked great, but her dress looked like dog shit.
Oh, no, that's how you gossip. That's what passive aggressiveness does, is it breeds us being petty and gossiping.
Yeah.
Well, because what it also is like, you're bothered by something somebody said to you, but you don't address it or do anything, but you need to get it out because it bugs you. And so you're just like, God, that cunt Jessica you should hear what she just said from your shoes. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is so freeing to not have to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
You connect with people better if, neither of you is offended. You're just like, yeah. And it is okay. And you do, I feel more confident as a human being to be able to express myself and to, like, have myself be appreciated in a way that I otherwise wouldn't have given it an opportunity to be.
Yeah. Well, I could do this all night, but I did say that we try to keep this at 90. So I always ask people to give advice, and you do a good job of explaining a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. But when it comes to individuals who's, I'm trying to think of how to word this question, but when it comes to self-reflectiveness, and like people's trepidation towards it, like, do you have advice for people on how to kind of look inward and come up with healthy? Does that make sense where I'm trying to go? Like,
no, I think any level of introspection automatically results in a healthier something. And to be a healthier anything, introspection it is necessarily part of it. You have to.
like, what are some, like, do you have self-reflective, like, practices or like inner dialogue that you give yourself?
Honestly, meditation.
Oh, do you meditate?
Yeah, I'm shit at it. With the ADD, but also just as a human, even listening to like a guided meditation.
Yeah.
Everything's helpful. So whatever that could be, but my concept of what meditating even was often, I think maybe that's just part of the progress as you learn more about what it is as you do it. I actually had heard that and experienced that. So one of the things that I would say is just work on however you're breathing or looking with your eyes or closing your whatever it is. Try not to think in English. And it's hard to hold that, and then don't have any judgment about like whatever thought. Whenever you catch yourself lost in thought, which is a natural thing, bring yourself back to, because what it does, it literally changes your brain, your neurochemistry, because you're reinforcing those neurons to like observe a lot of sounds and sights and feelings and you know, any of the other senses, anything that's going on right now that you would never have caught. And when you start observing anything, you just allow your brain to notice things. You notice yourself, your emotion. When somebody says something, you feel the feeling in real time and react to it. Even therapy teaches you like how to be present and mindful and know your feelings, and that's really kind of where that gets you.
Yeah. Well, and therapy is a great example of, I mean, you're, you know, dropping your walls and allowing for an interpretation of why you feel a certain way.
Without judgment.
Yeah, without a bias, then you're getting, that is a type of like self-reflection and Yeah, thank you again for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
If you ever want to come back, if there's a topic you want to hit, then absolutely can do it.
I was thinking, have you had a Tramba on the show?
No, I need to.
I would love to be.
You
I
want
have not interacted in real life with that guy enough. Same as most of you guys. But that would be super fun for me. I was
Yeah.
very interested, and I don't know why it struck me. Even
It's funny you say that because I've been putting it off. Like, I do want to have him on, but I need to do it because there are some things that like with his father's passing and all that like there was a lot of shit that hit home, and like there's all these things attached to it. So
you don't want to delve into.
I get nervous, but then it always ends up being a good thing. Like, I was nervous about having Tyler on because the cancer stuff was so fucking fresh, and like I knew there was going to be like some tough points, but yeah, I got to do it.
That's part of doing this, right? Like, it's part of like what you hope for sometimes.
Yeah.
Or like what people want to see.
Yes, I agree.
So that means we're gonna do it.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, sure. And I'm around weekday. You're actually closer. I drove all the way out to Becker to go back here. You're closer to my starting point than where I went to. I just plugged in your address.
What can you do?
I went to the dollar store.
All right, awesome. Yeah, thank you again for doing this. And to the listeners, be well to yourselves.